Hey everybody, this is Dizzy Reed from Guns N' Roses and Hookers and Blow, and you're listening to the Thunder Underground.
Welcome to episode 432 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always, and we've really got a great one this week because Dizzy Efren Reed is back on the podcast. Dizzy Reed, of course, most well known as being the keyboardist for the mighty Guns N' Roses for the past 35 years. He also is the keyboardist, vocalist for Hookers and Blow. He also has a couple solo albums out. He has also performed with many other artists throughout his career. I'm very excited to have Dizzy back. His new album, Rock and Roll Chose Me, is out now. It came out everywhere this past Friday on digital formats. It was released on vinyl already a couple weeks ago. You can still purchase that. Dizzy, of course, will talk about that coming up in the interview, but you can just hit up his website right now and go ahead and buy that. If you have not heard the album yet and you're listening to this, I find that alarming. Not really, but you need to hit up your streaming platform or whatever it is, wherever you soak in your music from. Check out Rock and Roll Chose Me. Great new album from Dizzy. I'm going to talk a little bit about that before we get into this interview. But first thing first, I need to let you know who sponsors this podcast. DEB Concerts, a concert promoter based in the Tulsa area who has continually brought great concerts to Tulsa, and they've also booked the DEB concert stage at Rocklahoma for the last several years as well. They booked the pre-party at Rocklahoma, and like I said, they booked shows in downtown Tulsa throughout the years. They've been doing this for a long time now. Tons of great acts. This year at Rocklahoma featured Orianthi, Van Halen, Sebastian Bach, Lita Ford, Mike Tramp, Snakebite Whiskey, Dime Store Riot, so many other great ones on this stage. And Doug and DEB Concerts continues to bring great music to the Oklahoma area. So hit up debconcerts.com, follow them on the socials so you don't miss upcoming info. And here at Thunder Underground, of course, I'll let you know every time a concert's coming as well. We've also got Sunset Tattoo, a tattoo shop located in Midtown Tulsa. They're state licensed, they're Native American owned, and they have a female artist on staff full time. 30 plus years of experience from Jake and his crew over there at Sunset Tattoo. I've had work done by Jake more than once. I'm super happy with everything that he's done for me, and I know many other people that have had work done at Sunset Tattoo. That also includes many artists from some bands you love, I promise you that, because Jake has tattooed a lot of rock and metal artists throughout the years as well. So hit up Sunset Tattoo on their socials. It's Sunset Tattoo Tulsa on both Facebook and Instagram. There's tons of photos on there so you can see all their work, see what they specialize in. If you've got an idea that you need help bringing to life, they can obviously help you with that. Send them a message, give them a call to set up a consultation time. They also accept walk-ins. They have specials running all the time, so follow them on those socials so you don't miss that, and let them know you heard about them right here on Thunder Underground. All right, so let's get into some talk about Dizzy Reed. Like I mentioned right there at the beginning, this brand new album, Rock and Roll Chose Me, is out now everywhere. You need to check it out if you like good hard rock, if you like rock and roll. Dizzy Reed, of course, is, right in the center of all that. He, of course, has been involved with one of the purest hard rock bands in rock and roll history, in my opinion, with Guns N' Roses. And of course, Hookers and Blow fits right into that mold as well. And what Dizzy does with his solo work does as well. And of course, all that makes sense with Dizzy's history and like his love of music and where it all came from for him. Of course, is that heart of rock and roll going way back. The album Rock and Roll Chose Me is his follow-up to his first solo album, Rock and Roll Ain't Easy. You see a theme here? Rock and roll is in both those titles. Like I said, this man oozes rock and roll. That's just the way it is. This album, I feel like, has a slightly more hard rock edge than the first one. Not that the first one didn't. I just mean overall it feels like there's maybe a couple more songs that lead that way. He's great about having a diverse kind of, you got a little bit to choose from here. You've got like your old school rock and roll ballad kind of songs, and you've got your hard rock, driving hard rock songs. And like he talks about coming up, you even got some unique sounds that haven't been evident in his first solo album or with Hookers and Blow. So you got a lot here to dive into. I talked to him a bit about it, some of these songs. There's a instrumental song on here called Intro to the Outro that has a real kind of Deep Purple vibe. Of course, thanks to that organ that Dizzy is so well known for, like the mighty Jon Lord, which, kind of side tangent. I'd had it down kind of in my head to speak about Jon Lord, or at least ask him a couple questions. And he brought up Jon Lord pretty early on, actually, I think when I mentioned this song, talked a little bit about how he, of course, is one of his, biggest inspirations when it comes to that Hammond organ and, of course, just keyboard and piano playing in general. Yeah, I mean, as someone who's not a keyboard or piano player myself, I've just always been a massive fan of Jon Lord and just everything he did with Deep Purple and everything he did with Whitesnake. Such a phenomenal talent. I wish that guy was still around. Never got the chance to see him live personally, even though I saw both those bands more than once. Never when he was involved, unfortunately. But Dizzy is a man I have seen live many, many times. Of course, every single time has been with Guns N' Roses. I've never got the chance to see Hookers and Blow, but hopefully that chance will come one day. And speaking of Hookers and Blow, if you're out of the loop, they released an album for the first time here just a few years ago. It was 2021, I believe. And we kind of talked, in detail about several of the tracks that they covered. It's a full covers album. And I feel like it's definitely one of the better, if not the best, covers album, in my opinion, of the last several years, because during the pandemic especially, a lot of guys, or a lot of artists, released cover albums, a lot of them would be like, kind of these little super groups, guys getting together because of the pandemic to do this stuff, which is cool. Some cool stuff came out of that. But I feel like probably what makes Hookers and Blow better, at least to my ears maybe, is the fact that this is a band that has been together for a long time. They've been playing live shows repeatedly throughout the years. So now they're just bringing that to the recorded world for us. And there's some really unique songs on here, on that album. The Winner Loses by Body Count from Body Count's first album is on here. That's just, when you hear that, you're like, what? But it translates extremely well. It sounds like the same song. You get the same vibe, but it has a totally, not the same vibe. It has the same feel, but you get a totally different vibe from what Dizzy brings and what the full band of Hookers and Blow brings. And in something like No Quarter, we talk about, I absolutely love their cover of this. There's been tons of covers of this song throughout the years. And what I love most about their version is it feels like the most unique of those covers. I know Crowbar did it way back in the day, a super heavy version, which is unique. But this to me just at times feels like its own song. And I think, because it has that sound that Dizzy brings, that Alex Grossi brings. And of course, Sharon vocals with Nadia, his wife, who's part of Hookers and Blow as well as a vocalist. And there's several songs on here, that she shines on as well, like Time of the Season with him. There's a great cover of the Beastie Boys' Fight for Your Right to Party, where she handles all the vocals, and it's got a real kind of poppy vibe, more of an old school, I hate to use the word pop punk, because that leads your mind right to something like Blink-182, but I'm talking like that kind of poppy punky stuff from the early 80s, late 70s, like your Runaways or something along those lines. That's the vibe you get from this. But this whole album, absolutely fantastic as well. So I implore you to check out not only Rock and Roll Chose Me, not only Rock and Roll Ain't Easy, but check out the Hookers and Blow album for some great cover songs. Shaken by Eddie Money is on there. There's another Zeppelin track, Trampled Underfoot. Check that out when you get a chance. But yeah, Dizzy as a whole, he's one of those guys that I've always just loved as a musician, loved as an artist, since I was a kid. And that goes hand in hand with the fact that the band he is in has been my favorite band since I was a kid. So for the chance to get to speak to this man about his solo work, about Hookers and Blow, and about, some other bands and artists that he loves is very cool for me. As it is, I've been doing this podcast now over a decade. And it's always great when you get to talk to someone that you grew up admiring or a musician that you really like. But it always feels different when it's just someone who you like their music Whereas there's someone who you really, really like their music and you like the band they're a part of and everything they've done. You know, Dizzy Reed, of course, has been in Guns N' Roses now for 35 years. He joined in 1990 during the recording process of Use Your Illusions and has been there ever since. He's literally the only guy that has been there that whole time besides Axl throughout that entire period. And he's pretty much played on stage with every person I believe has ever been in Guns N' Roses. If I'm could be wrong about that fact, but you know, Steven Adler came back a few times or a couple times during the Not in This Lifetime tour. So I would assume that's really the only like official member, you know, not talking about pre-Appetite members or anything else, but that makes the man having been on stage just like Axl with everybody that's ever been an official part of this band. Again, huge honor for me. I implore you to go back and check out episode 240. That was the first time that Dizzy was on here. It was a little under 6 years ago. I believe it was late 2019. Because I looked it up the other day before we recorded this. We talked a lot about his first solo album, Rock and Roll Ain't Easy, and a lot of other things. That was a fun interview as well. You know, there's a song, Forgotten Cases, from his first album, which I really love. We talked a bit about that in the video for it. It's an animation. And the new album that is out now, Rock and Roll Chose Me. I just repeating these names a million times so you get it stuck in your head. Has a song called Earn It to Burn It, which is also an animated video. Very cool. You know, I think it's listed as a lyric video, but it's not one of those lyric videos where there's just imagery in the background with the lyrics coming across the screen. It has a story, an animated story going on here as well. It's a very good song and a very good story and meaning behind it. So be sure and check that out. Another thing I wanted to throw in, if you're listening to this because you're a Guns N' Roses fan specifically, and you love listening to the podcasts, there's a podcast out there called Appetite for Distortion. Appetite for Distortion is hosted by Brando. Brando has a long history in the world of radio as a DJ. I believe he's an engineer as well for a radio station in the New York area. And he's been doing Appetite for Distortion for many years now. I'm pretty positive that Dizzy Reed has been on there before as well. And of course he has on very Guns N' Roses centric guests, you know, like Alan Niven, or, you know, these guys throughout the years that, you know, have a hand in the history of the band. But he also brings in guests all the time, you know, tons of guests that have been on this podcast like Glenn Hughes or anybody else. And when he has someone else on, he always somehow ties it into Guns N' Roses, even if they have no involvement with Guns N' Roses, usually just a question of, you know, an experience they might have had with them touring or knowing one of the members or working with one of the members in any form or fashion. Yeah, he recently had on Don Felder, I remember, and he spoke to him about when he performed with Slash. So there's tons of great stuff that you can check out throughout Appetite for Distortion's history. And one of those things is this podcast right here. A few episodes, well, 40-some episodes later, episode 283 after Dizzy, 240. Episode 283, Brando joined me on this podcast, and we talked quite a bit about his podcast, of course, random Guns N' Roses stuff and all that. And that was right about 5 years ago. I just looked it up, and it was August of 2020. That was like the halfway point, or a little over the halfway point of my podcast. So here we are 5 years later. Maybe I should hit up Brando and bring him back on, because lots happened in 5 years since the pandemic of 2020, right? But anyway, enough of me talking about that. Let's jump into this, and let's hear what the man has to say himself about Rock and Roll Chose Me and Hookers and Blow. Here is Dizzy effin' Reed. Rock and Roll Chose Me, you know,
Yes.
is out everywhere this week. You've already got a few singles out. Like, how would you describe this to someone like kind of as an extension from the first solo album a few years ago?
I think it's an extension. It's maybe more of like the next step too, probably, you know. I think I took a lot more uh liberties with this record. Um I didn't feel as restricted. I kind of wanted to just really explore and add some cool modern ear candy and stuff, you know, to the record. So and it was more just based on the songs and not so much on like there's some great solos on it and the record, but it's not so much about that, you know, it's about the songs.
It seems to have a slightly heavier, like more hard rock vibe than Rock and Roll Ain't Easy to Me. Is that, and also a little bit more guitar driven than that one? Like, is that an
Yeah.
accurate description in your opinion too?
Well, I think you know all the songs that I've put out on my own are all sort of you know I write almost everything on the guitar.
Okay.
It's just it's you know I'm into guitar based music. That's what I've always liked, and the bands that I've played with are all sort of guitar based. So it's you know in that regard it is about the guitar. I think it might be a little bit heavier than the first. Yeah, the tones are a little bit heavier probably, and some of the riffs for sure. Yeah, than the first record.
Yeah, I mean, as far as guitar driven, I just kind of meant I feel like there was a little bit more focus on keys in that first record than there seems to be on this. At least obvious. I know, like you said, there's a lot of sounds and stuff that are unique. Like the first couple songs kind of have a sound that is kind of not not as obvious as what you would expect from Dizzy Reed.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I mean, I think there's probably I think this record features keyboards a little bit more, you know,
Okay.
here and there, just a different, you know, the piano, of course, but also the Hammond. You know, a lot of people are like, dude, when are you gonna, you know, you don't ever solo, so okay, you know what? Here's a solo, here's an organ solo on earn it, you know. So that's yeah, it's probably a little bit more keyboard. Yeah, yeah, it features keys a little bit more, I think, than it's a little more diverse. Let's put it that way. 'Cause the first
Okay.
album mostly just piano and stuff. I guess diverse is the word I was looking for.
Yeah. Well, Earn It to Burn It is one of the singles you got out. I love this song. It's got a great, a great hook and great lyrics. The lyrics are kind of, obvious what they're about, but what do they mean to you personally?
Well, I think it's just about I wanted people to think about what it is that drives everybody to it's about it's sort of falling off, jumping off that the American dream that we're all supposed to, you know, that we are force fed constantly. It doesn't need to be that way. It's unattainable for most people. And then again, what is it? It's ever changing. I don't know. So it's just about thinking about just changing your way of your outlook and everything, and not so much uh it, you know forget about the material things and more about just loving your neighbor and and appreciating like but you know love goes a lot further than anything you can buy. So
I really dig that. That song's preceded by this instrumental intro through the outro, and it's got a real Deep Purple-esque kind of vibe to it. Of course, a band that is very notable with the Hammond. Kind of talk about that. That feels to me like a great song that could be a great intro to a live show as well.
it's funny you should say that because I was kind of like um I kind of envision it that way, like coming out
Okay.
to that or some dumb recording that we made, but probably that. Yeah, and that song is it's a tribute to my two favorite, well, three different people really. It's John Lord, of course, but also Booker T and the MGs. That's how I really discovered that I could play pop music was when I listened to Booker T the first time. My dad had a bunch of his records, and I was like, I'd been playing my grandmother's organ. She was kind of teaching me how to play, and I thought, wait a second, that's I was discovering pop music and realized that's the instrument I can play. And then I threw a little Edgar Winter tribute in there too with a little synth solo. But that, you know, Jeff Duncan plays on that song, Jeff, and he just
Okay.
makes it so heavy. It really like took it to the next level.
Yeah, that was one of the questions. We talked about guitars on this. I didn't know if Alex was a part of this whole album or who else you brought in there. So, like, who all do you have involved in this?
Uh, Alex is definitely on this record. Jeff Duncan, as we said, my friend Brian Sabalos, and one of my favorite guitar players, Forrest Goss. He's from LA. The great Mark Zavon. does some amazing solos on this. And then Jason Mazilis, who co-produced the record with me, he plays guitar in some songs too.
I mean, as the writer of all these songs, when you bring guys in for these solos and stuff like that, do you already have an idea of what you want, or do you kind of just let them do their thing in their style?
I guess it depends. I mean, with there's certain parts where I'll hear something and I'll say, I think, can you try to go in this direction? But a lot of times I'll have the chord progression laid out already, and I'll say, just do your thing. And if it's, and I trust certain people to do that, like Mark certainly, and also Jeff, but all those guys, that played on, I trust them to do the right thing. So, um, yeah, and between myself and Jason, when he's got the guys in the studio, he has more suggestions for that kind of thing, So, um, yeah, I mean, Jeff, the song called DIB, which is the first single, and Alex played all the guitars on it, and we uh we realized after we had him that day, he went home and we're like, we forgot to get the guitar solo. So when Jeff came in a couple days later to do his stuff, we're like, oh hey, by the way, can you play the solo on DIB? And I'm pretty sure that was the first take. And we said, okay, you got it, thank you.
Wow.
And that's one of those cases where like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's going to do the right thing.
Who's doing the solo on the title track?
On the title track, that is Alex
Okay.
and my friend Forrest. They're kind of trading off.
Okay. Yeah, I really love that one.
Oh,
Just
right
kind of
on.
jumped out to me. But
Cool.
kind of a dumb question, but is the title, is it kind of a theme now, like as you do solo albums with rock and roll in each title?
Well, yes, I guess it was kind of, but
Like it wasn't a conscious thing, like, oh, this is going to be called this because the last one was rock and roll and easy.
well, I thought about that and I thought, what, that could be cool. So, uh, but it wasn't like planned out ahead of time or anything.
Gotcha. You kind of mentioned it, like writing on the guitar, but is it always guitar or does a Dizzy Reed solo song sometimes start on piano or keyboards?
I definitely write stuff on the piano too.
Okay.
But most of the time it's, the guitar is just like, you can't carry a piano around with you.
Yeah.
It's like the guitar is more personal, so I always try to have one close by. You never know when the inspiration's going to hit.
Have you ever written on one or the other and then transposed it to the other instrument?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's a song called the title track of my first record,
Okay.
Rough and Easy. It sounds like a piano song, but I wrote that whole thing on my acoustic, like just sitting outside in the rain one time after things had kind of gone full circle. And I was
Mhm.
like, and it just, I mean, the whole thing, the solo section, everything. I transcribed it to piano.
Is that pretty easy to do? Like, does it naturally translate to either one, like that song specifically?
Um, I mean, for me, it is.
Yeah.
I just kind of create with the guitars and stuff, I kind of create I guess a format, something to follow, chord progressions to follow, and then just kind of paint within that with the piano or whatever instrument.
I know on your first album, you had talked about, a lot of those songs had been with you for a long time leading up to that. Are most of these songs on the new album like written since the first solo album, like in the past 7 years, or are they other songs that have kind of been with you for a while too?
Some of the songs, Contact, I mean, that might be 30 years old.
Oh wow.
It's been sitting around for a long time. And we were going to put it on the first record, but we just didn't have enough space. So we never ended up even tracking it, but did for this record. And yeah, there's some of those tunes I came up with for this record, but a lot of them were, sitting on my desktop, just waiting to be finished. And I kind of had a list of priorities of which songs I wanted to do and finish and put out and what the next best collection of songs would be. And I originally wanted to do 12 songs like the first record, but some of these songs are so long, it wouldn't have fit on vinyl.
Or are you the type of guy that is always writing, or do you kind of go in waves, like spend time writing for a while and then come back to it later?
I mean, if there's an idea pops in my head, I'm gonna record it somehow, even if it's just singing it into my iPhone.
Gotcha.
Um, but I definitely dedicate time to sitting down and hashing out songs. I mean, it's not easy to write songs. A lot of people think it might be, but it's not. And I've learned from some of the best, and it's a craft. It really is. Um, just because you recorded it one way, just your demo version, whatever, it doesn't mean it has to be that way. And you get kind of set in your head like um, that's fine because I like it. But it's like you can change things and make it better probably. And I like to run it by other people too sometimes.
So is that the kind of thing you lean on Jason for and like on these couple albums?
Um, Jason for some stuff, but like lyrically, especially, I'll take it, but to Del James, and we
Okay.
kind of go through things. But on this record, for instance, my friend Forrest Goss, I ran um, some of the arrangements by him, and I was a couple of things I wasn't sure of, and he just came out with a suggestion like that. I'm going, dude, that's perfect. Like the going into the solo on My Wounds, that was his idea, and then because him and Mark played such great stuff on that track, I doubled the solo section. I go, I want, this needs more of this to tell the story. And they did a great job. I mean, it's just so cool.
Well, I know like with Hookers and Blow, you've integrated, some of these solo songs into your guys' sets. Like, is there any of these songs on the new album that you're excited to perform live specifically?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially the ones those guys played on, because Mike Duda and Johnny Kelly play on the first three songs on side two, the
Okay.
intro, the outro, then the last two singles. So that seems kind of natural. And Alex is on Rock and Roll Chose Me and DIB. So I think some of those songs would be. I mean, eventually I'd like to play all the songs, but with Hookers and Blow, we have our other things too. I hope to integrate some of the songs into the Hookers and Blow set for sure. And I know we've already talked about it, and they're into it.
Speaking of Hookers and Blow, last time I talked to you on this podcast, the only thing that was out from that album was Shaken, and it was just like a minute long clip.
Oh
And you
yeah.
had spoken about how there's probably going to be some songs that would surprise some people on this album. So the obvious question is like, where did the idea to cover Body Count come from?
I
Like,
you
was that
know
something
that
you thought about for a long time, or had you played it live, or
Alex and Nacha both really wanted to cover
okay?
that. That was their idea, and I listened to it, and I'm like, yeah, we can do this. We might need to cut it down a little bit, and I love Body Count. Um, and that was really hard to like deliver that because Ice-T is so intense, and you gotta if you're gonna do a cover song, you gotta make it at least as good as the original. Try to make it, and put your own spin on it, but don't take too many liberties. Try to cover everything. And the delivery was just that was kind of tough, but I think we pulled it off. I love the version, and I think we got a thumbs up from Ice-T as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you heard through the grapevine, or heard through him specifically, or,
Um,
or
I heard through the grapevine,
okay,
through various text messaging and whatnot, that he gave it a thumbs up.
very cool. I mean, obviously, way back in the day, you toured with Body Count. Did you get the chance to see him live much on that tour?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely saw the play back then. It was kind of. I know we played the Coliseum with them here in LA, and I guess, I don't know. I remember something about they just really upped the security because they had that song Cop Killer, and they thought something crazy was going to happen. It's just like, uh, it was all cool. It was all good, and I think they're a great band, and it's so good to see them making music and doing stuff again, too. Ernie C is a great, great guy, great guitar player, and great songwriter,
Yeah, I think Ernie C is wildly underrated as a guitarist and a songwriter.
or for sure.
Another of the song on Hookers and Blow that really jumped out to me was Time of the Season. And I've always considered this like a top 20 song of all time. And that's something that kind of came later in my life as I got older. But
Yeah.
you being a bit older than me, was this a song that you attached to in your youth and kind of stuck with you throughout your life, or
You know what? It was one of my dad's sort of go-to songs. It was, when I grew up, it's like my parents aren't musicians, but they love music. And so there was always rock and roll playing. and like unlike a lot of their friends and people that are the same age as them, they grew up in the 50s. They were when rock and roll was brand new. So a lot of people just they grew out of it, so to speak. My parents never did. They kept getting, and my dad bought the first Boston record. He wore it out, and he, like they kept getting into more and more new stuff. But Time of the Season was one of the songs that my dad would always have playing. So I wanted to do that. Plus, I'm a big Rod Argent fan, the keyboard player, and I think someone put it to me. It might have been my dad that maybe I couldn't play the solo. so so the challenge was accepted basically.
Right.
And also, I knew that Nadia would shine on that song, which she really does. And us together, I think it works really cool.
Yeah. That's actually, I'd written down in my notes two things was that I really loved the solo and I loved your choice of the dual vocals with Nadia.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
like bringing that into the mix.
yeah. It turned out really cool. We actually kind of sound good together sometimes. All, all,
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of that, I don't know if this is kind of a corny question, but like, what's it feel like to be able to, record a piece of music and listen back to it, with you and your wife together?
she would probably have a different answer, but uh, it's pretty awesome to have her to bounce ideas off of, because she's going to be honest with me, right? So she's going to say that reminds her, she'll say it reminds her of some other song, which maybe I wasn't going for that. And then I'll hear it and go, oh, you're right. So, you know, I'll scrap that idea or change it. But I totally value her opinion about it. And it's good. She definitely she's turned me on to a lot of music that I wouldn't have like normally gotten into, like, a lot of really deep alternative stuff, like Bauhaus, Nick Cave, that kind of stuff, which is all so great. So it's cool to bring in her input and I value it quite a bit, and it's definitely been a big influence on the how I write and what I record.
Yeah, I think that's kind of noticeable on the new album too. Like we talked about those kind of unique keyboard sounds. There's kind of a 80s almost new wave-ish sound, but I mean not really. It still sounds hard rock, but it's kind of got that vibe to me at times, like on Revolution LA and DIB.
Yeah. Well, it's I'm like a sponge, like it's I'm into so much different music and it's always it's up there just waiting to come out. So I just remember it's certain things will really stick out in my mind. Like I remember seeing Joe Walsh and he had a band called The Flu, and I saw him down at the Coach House, which is a little place down in Orange County. And he it was Nicky Hopkins on keyboards, and Terry Reid was singing. It was so cool. But he came out. There's the dressing room's upstairs, right? So Joe comes down the stairs and over to Nicky Hopkins' keyboard setup, and he pushes a button, and it just starts this little synth thing. Uh, it was the line to "Life's Been Good," I think, right?
Oh,
And that starts the show, right? So I'm like, whoa. And then he picks up his guitar, and then everyone starts coming down the stairs, and they all kind of pick it up eventually. And I thought, that's just so amazing. And similarly, I saw the Talking Heads at Red Rocks one time, and
wow.
David Byrne comes out with a boombox, him and a boombox,
Yeah.
and he's got this light casting this shadow of him, like it looks like this crazy shadow on the rocks. And he pushes it and he starts playing Psycho Killer. And then the band sort of comes out one at a time for each song, and just that little thing. So those kind of things stick out in my mind. It really sets up the the experience. And I wanted to sort of capture something like that with this. So that's why, Revolution LA, I'm experimenting with that. And I think it kind of works. I mean, some people might find it annoying. I don't know, but the guitars kick in. It's pretty heavy.
You also mentioned last time that, voices like Robert Plant don't feel as natural to you when they're higher like that. Was Trampled Underfoot like the hardest song to tackle on that album, or was it something else? Vocal wise,
It,
I mean. Yeah.
it's definitely one of them for sure. It's and it was kind of like I was really concentrating on the keyboard stuff, the clav. And then it came time to sing it. I'm like, oh shit. What am I gonna do? But I've been singing that in some form or another since I was a kid. That song and No Quarter, which is on the record too. So I had kind of the general idea of what voice I was going to use and how I was going to approach it. But it's not easy for sure. Maybe one day we'll try it live when I'm feeling really confident.
So you haven't done any Zeppelin live or just that specifically, man?
I think we might have played it once actually
Okay.
in Vegas, but I think I had Jizzy Pearl sing it because he's coming up to be a special guest, and I'm like, oh, why don't you just sing "Trample Underfoot"? That'll be much easier for me.
Right. Well, you mentioned No Quarter, and I absolutely love your guys' take on this as well.
Right on.
Talk a little bit about the solo section of that. I love how the guitar and the keyboard kind of melds together in that solo.
Yeah, it was all kind of I actually, for some reason, I bought the sheet music for No Quarter. I just wanted to look at it. And when it gets to the solo section, it just says like, freeform basically. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. So
Really?
that's
Okay.
I can officially just do whatever the fuck I want. Oh, cool. So I definitely, uh, I went for it. But yeah, it's just Alex and I always work really great together. It's always a great pleasure to play with him. And speaking of those two Zeppelin songs, that the late great Frankie Banali. I mean, what can you say? He was one of the greatest drummers ever, and to have him on those songs it was um, really really special. And I think those are the last two things he recorded.
I
So
guess I didn't even know that. So he's on the drums on both the Zeppelin songs, and
yes, he
oh,
is.
okay.
Yeah, he is. He played on my first record. He played on Rock and Roll Ain't Easy and Forgotten Cases.
Right.
And so, but if we're gonna do Zeppelin, he's gonna play we need him to play the drums
Yeah.
for sure. But he was an amazing cat and a great drummer, and he is very missed.
Yes. Stepping back just a second to what you just said a minute ago about the sheet music and it said freeform. I'm not a musician.
That's not the official word,
Okay.
but it was improvise or something.
Okay.
I was blown away. I'm like, oh, that's great because
I mean, is that
when
a common thing in music at all? Because I'm not a musician, so it just kind of strikes me as odd that it wouldn't be like just detailed exactly what they did.
yeah, well, the thing is, if you listen to various versions of No Quarter, he's doing something different every time.
Okay. Yeah.
Just kind of freeform, kind of just jamming, which is great because I'd rather do that. And not everyone can do that, but I can, and
Yeah.
he certainly can. So yeah.
So when you're covering a song, like you kind of mentioned earlier about, the winner loses, like, you don't want to stray too far away, but does that give you a little more freedom, to do what you want when it's an improvised,
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
like that? Yeah.
yeah, for sure. When it's sort of if that's that's how it is written, then that's yeah, of course. I think there are certain things like guitar solos and stuff like you have to. People are expecting to hear something sometimes, whether that's a riff that's in the middle of a solo that you got to do. Like you couldn't play a strange and just jam on that
Right.
song. Those are specific riffs that people are expecting to hear.
Right.
And it's a solo section. They're all the solo sections, but it's also it's a composition.
Gotcha. Is like anything on this album, or just, I guess, anything you've ever covered, like what's probably the hardest piano or keyboard part that you've tackled that another artist wrote?
Well, I recorded a Chopin piece one time,
Wow. Okay.
so that was a challenge.
Yeah.
Kicked my ass. Yeah, I did Raindrops.
How long did that take you to like get to where you were comfortable with it?
Well, quite some time. I really, I mean, I went in deep for about a week or so, and this is before the common elements of Pro Tools and some of the things that we have now makes it easier to do stuff like punch a piano. Punching in a piano, if people don't know, it's like when you want to pick something up at a certain point, like, okay, it's good up to here. Let's punch you in at this spot, like, on the second verse, right? And then you go from there, right? Well, with piano, you have to find a punch point because with the sustain, everything bleeding together, there's going to be these differences, right? Now you can just fade that together on your computer and it's fine. But back then you couldn't, right? So, um, you had to get it right. The Chopin piece, it's like we found one punch point and I was just like, okay, I just for my own, like, I guess, well, mental well-being, like I know if I can get to that point, we can punch from there on out. But I ended up doing it in one take, so, but it took a couple tries. It was a bitch. And then it came out on an album called Steinway to Heaven with all these other cats, the rock and roll guys playing classical pieces that they picked out. It's like Rick Wakeman, Keith Emerson, Dave Bryan. It's pretty cool.
Very
I think
cool.
it's still out there floating around.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that. Like, how long ago was that?
Probably 30 years ago.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. Excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a final hookers and blow question for you. One of my favorite bands is Typo Negative. So
Oh,
I'm a
yeah.
big fan of Johnny Kelly, and I always
Yeah.
thought, kind of like we said about Ernie C, he's never really gets the kind of respect I think he deserves. So, like, speak a little bit about him and how you think of him as a drummer.
Well, as I introduce him every night, one of the great rock drummers of all time, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Johnny Kelly, and that's no bullshit. He is. He's fucking fantastic, and he's a lot of fun to tour around with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taking it back 30 plus years, one of my favorite songs to ever come out of like the extended GNR universe is Gilby Clarke's Let's Get Lost. And I know you played on a few songs on Pawn Shop Guitars. Do you have
Yeah.
any like specific memories of recording that or the songs on that album or Let's Get Lost specifically?
I remember going to Conway Studios, and Waddy Wachtel was there, who I was a big fan of.
Yeah.
As a producer. That's all I remember, really. I just played a show with Gilby last October, and it was pretty fun at the Roxy. And his daughter got up and sang, so that was pretty cool.
Very cool. Would you sit in on one of his solo shows or what kind of show was it?
It was an all-star thing for, I can't remember what it was for,
Okay.
but it was then. This is now.
Gotcha. Well, you mentioned Jeff Duncan earlier too, and Punching the Sky is an awesome album, and I had saw that you were on the credits for that. Like, what song were you on? Like one song or several songs, or like what was your involvement on that
I,
album?
I think I'm on a couple songs. I'd have to go back and look. I think I played on a couple songs.
Is
Yeah.
that like the heaviest thing that you've ever really been a part of, recording wise?
Um, it's one of them. I did this stuff with this Spanish super heavy metal band called Prophecia.
Okay,
It's really cool music. It's super duper heavy. I played on a Motorhead track too, so that's kind of heavy.
that's right.
Some Backyard Babies.
Everyone I've been interviewing in the last month, I've got to ask the obligatory kind of Ozzy question. Like, if he wasn't like a massive influence on you as a musician growing up, like, kind of where do you like hold him in regard and like your fandom of music?
Ozzy was to me, he was like the patriarch of metal and music. It's just there was something about knowing that he was out there doing that and kind of on behalf of all the great rockers and stuff. It seemed like he was a huge influence. Black Sabbath was a huge influence on me. So, and Ozzy especially. Excuse me. What's going on? He brought so many great guitar players to the fold. Randy Rhoads, and luckily I got to see Ozzy with Randy Rhoads
Oh, wow.
back in the early, like 1981, 82 or something. Had Tommy Aldrich on drums and Rudy Sarzo on bass, and luckily I got to see that show. That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, really, stuff that he's been involved in, it changed music a lot. It set the precedent, and that's not by accident. He was really special but really smart and knew good talent when he saw it and was able to harness that and put it out in some of the most memorable songs we've ever had.
Did you ever cross paths with him throughout the years at any point?
I never got to cross paths with Ozzy,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
I would have, but I never did. So lots of
Like,
other people, not Ozzy.
yeah. Well, as far as like you said, the Black Sabbath influence, like, when you were younger, what was it that like kind of drew you in as a guy that was also into, something like Booker T or, Emerson, Lake and Palmer?
I remember going back to visit my family because I grew up in Colorado, but I was born out of the Chicago area, and all my cousins and aunts and uncles still live back there. So we go visit them once in a while, and it was summer vacation, and man, I could have been 9 or 10, maybe. And my cousins, like I remember they turned me on to like the Beatles at one time when I was back there. And I'm like, oh, but I was kind of freaked out. Like, why are the girls screaming? What's happening? It's like I thought they were getting hurt, because I was a little kid.
Yeah.
So anyway, so then they were listening to Black Sabbath. And I looked at the album cover and I was listening to the words. And I'm like, this is scary. I don't like this, man. So, at first I was like not into it.
Yeah.
And then my uncle was staying with us at one point in Colorado, like maybe a summer later, and he was playing Black Sabbath. And now, all of a sudden, I'm like, it hit me. I'm like, wait a second, this is cool. It was cranking from his Jeep, outside in the summertime. And I'm like, okay, I get it now. That's awesome.
Very cool.
Because my first band, we could actually play Paranoid. So that was in our set list forever.
Kind of a complete 180 from that. You mentioned Colorado a couple times, and last time I was on, or last time I had you on, you talked about the University of Colorado a little bit. Like, what are your thoughts as a football fan about how Deion Sanders has kind of turned everything around? Are you a type of guy that is actively paying attention to college football still?
Well, I did watch the game last
Okay.
Friday,
Yeah.
and it didn't go so good. So I don't know. I think it was fun when he had his kids there. Hopefully, I don't know. We'll see if he means what he says, then he'll stick it out, and I'm sure he could do a good job and turn a lot of these young men into better, individuals, and they'll come out of the experience better, and maybe some will go on to the pros, and if they win, cool. That would be awesome. But college football is it's a tough nut to crack. If you're not one of the big schools, if that you always, if you're not Texas, Alabama, LSU, uh, Ohio State, and on, Oregon, um, it's tough to keep up. And then it seems like when you do get ahead, then all of a sudden there's some sort of investigation, or the coach leaves because now and he goes to the pros or he goes to one of the big schools. So
Right.
um, it kind of makes you lose your faith in it. But at the same time, going to a football game at Folsom Field in Boulder, there's nothing like it. Just the environment, the setting, it's really special and really cool. And so to have a little bit of the national spotlight on that now, hopefully it'll help out the program and help out Dion, Coach Prime, and get some wins in there and maybe make it to the playoff. That'd be awesome. Would be. It would be
Yeah.
awesome.
I've assumed like just him being there, would bring guys in. At least if I was a younger kid, like I would want to play for that guy.
Yeah, no, and it has. And the one thing I don't quite totally understand now, because I'm from another time, but is this whole transfer portal thing. It just seems kind of like, I don't know, what's the point of recruiting anybody anymore if they're just going to leave. I'm all into the guys getting paid and all that, they for sure, because billions of dollars are generated from that, from college athletics. So yeah, of course they should get a chunk of that. And maybe they'll stick around too at that point. And so uh I don't know. I forgot my point to the whole thing, but go Buffs. How's that?
That works. Personally, I've always been, fortunate to have experienced, traveling to places like Japan and Saudi Arabia and Spain and Italy and Aruba, whatever. But, you've been in a position for the past 35 years where you've went to like across the world to just all types of countries. Is there anywhere where you've been and you've kind of thought like, I can't believe I'm in Estonia or I can't believe I'm wherever? Is there any more specific that you've kind of been taken aback that that's where you're at the moment?
I mean, you mentioned Saudi Arabia. We just played in Riyadh, and
Okay.
that was a trip for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely a different world. Uh, but we did it. And we played, yeah, though there's so many, it's the coolest thing is just seeing how rock and roll brings people together all over the world in a time when things are so divisive right now and so much bullshit going on. And then all of a sudden you're in, the last show we played with the Wacken Festival, there was people as far as you could see there for one thing together, right? And it's the same here. It's the same everywhere. And so to be able to do it in, more and more different places, like we played in Georgia, the country, for the first time, and like, wow, they're into it. This is fantastic, and like you don't think about those places, but there they were. They came out in droves, and it was really cool. Like again, the same songs all over the world. That's the common language. That's something people share in common, and that's one of the beautiful things about music is that it has the power to do that.
Yeah, I've always found that, yeah, like you just said, impressive. You can have one single song that, some guy in the middle of China, is singing along the same way that I would here,
Yeah,
even though we don't speak the same language. Like I'll sing along to a Rammstein song, but I don't know what I'm saying, and it's like just because you love the music.
yeah. It's a powerful thing, and it's sometimes when you're feeling like things are just getting shittier and shittier, it brings you a little hope for humanity. We can do it. We can come together. It's possible. So,
Absolutely. Well, speaking of like right now, like what kind of coming up do you have Hookers and Blow or Dizzy Reed solo shows planned at all?
well, I jumped back into rehearsals with GNR
Okay.
next week, and we're going to South America. So we'll be down there for through November, and then Hookers and Blow. I think we have some shows coming up around the holidays.
I mean, not to get too deep into that, but I mean, is that something that's easy for you to schedule? Do you know your GNR schedule like way in advance? I
I
mean, I would
wish.
assume you do, but like how far in advance do you know, like more than a year or
Nah. Most people know when we're coming to town way before I do. Let's put
oh,
it
okay.
that
Okay.
GNR is always my number one priority,
Of
and
course, yeah.
as long as I subscribe to that mindset, it all works out great.
Gotcha. All right, man. Well, I'm absolutely loving this new album and I appreciate you coming back on again. It's awesome to talk to you once again.
Cool, thank you. Can I tell people about they can still get the vinyl
Oh, of course.
if you go to my Instagram bio, click on Dizzy F and Read, it'll take you to my website, and you can, if you're interested, you can. There's still lots of limited edition vinyls left. It's like a translucent orange. It comes with a poster and sticker, and it's all autographed by me. Or you can go to the 50Q Records website also to check it out. And this Friday, we have the digital release, so it'll be on all the streaming services, I believe. And I'm very excited about that because it's been a long time coming.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, man.
To thank you, thanks for having me on again, and I hope to talk to you again soon, brother.
I appreciate that. There you go. Dizzy Reed of Hookers and Blow and Guns N' Roses. A huge thank you to Shauna O'Donnell of O'Donnell Media Group for her continued support of this podcast. And of course, a massive thank you to Dizzy for sitting down there with me for a little over 40 minutes to talk about his brand new album, Rock and Roll Chose Me, that is out everywhere now. So check that thing out as soon as you can. And like we talked about there and I talked about early on, check out the Hookers and Blow album from a few years ago if you have not. And of course, check out Rock and Roll Ain't Easy from about I believe that was 2018 if you have not checked that out either. And of course, you can see Dizzy Reed live around this world with Guns N' Roses. They're about to tour South America. You can, of course, see Hookers and Blow and Dizzy Reed solo every once in a while when they do shows. So follow him and the band on the socials so you see those updates. Of course, they play in the California area a lot, but every once in a while they make it out and hit other places. So Vegas, I know, but I meant like, I believe they actually came to Oklahoma City a few years ago. And I was just so bummed because I was out of town. Like my full-time job is working music festivals and events around the country. So there's tons of shows that, come to the area that I miss because I'm out of town working. And unfortunately, I think it was Oklahoma City. I just know that Hookers and Blow was nearby. Maybe it was Dallas or Kansas City. And I was just bummed that I finally kind of had a close proximity of the band and still didn't get the chance. But yeah, one of these days I'll see them. Absolutely love Dizzy and love Johnny Kelly, like we talked about there. Man, if you're a Type O Negative fan like me, several years ago I had Kenny Hickey on this podcast, so that was very, very cool. But yeah, speaking of that, if you want to check out some previous episodes, like I said early on, Dizzy Reed was on here episode 240. Brando from Appetite for Distortion was on here episode 283. And man, 431 episodes before this you can check out. I'm sure that there's been an artist from a band you love on here at some point. I've had on Glenn Hughes 3 times now. That's just crazy to me to be able to say. One of the absolute greatest musicians, greatest vocalist in the history of rock and roll has been on this podcast 3 times. I've also had on Frank Cannon from Tesla 4 times. Damon Johnson of so many things, notably Brother Kane, Black Star Riders. He's with Leonard Skinner now. He's been on here 6 times. Some other great names that have been on here throughout the years: Vivian Campbell of Def Leppard and Dio, Dee Snider of Twisted Sister, Jeff Tate, the original voice of Queensryche, Mark Slaughter, R.J. Hell from Hellstorm. I've had on members of Breaking Benjamin, Three Doors Down, Avatar, Seven Dust, Hatebreed, Motley Crue, Megadeth, Testament, Billy Idol. The list, my friends, is giant. I've had on Vanilla Ice on this podcast. I've had on Shooter Jennings. Of course, the heart of this podcast is hard rock and metal. We get pretty heavy at times. Trevor Sternad, the vocalist, the original vocalist of the Black Dahlia Murder, was on here at one point. And unfortunately, we lost him a few years ago. We've also lost some other, guys that have been on this podcast in the past. Notable to me, Reed Mullen, the drummer of Corrosion and Conformity, is one of my favorite, conversations that we ever had in the early days of this podcast. Got to have him on here at one point. Mike Dean from Corrosion and Conformity as well. Members of White Zombie, Helmet, Prong, Type O Negative. A lot of that 90s metal, and of course a lot of the 80s rock, has kind of thrived on this podcast. I already mentioned some of those bands, but also had on members of Bon Jovi. I think I said Motley Crue. I know I said Whitesnake. LA Guns, Kicks, Warrant, Firehouse, Trickster, Lillian Axe. The list is great and long in that area. TheThunderUnderground.com. That's where you can see all the episodes. You can listen right there. You can also listen pretty much wherever you listen to podcasts. So wherever you're listening to this right now, hit like, subscribe, follow so you don't miss future episodes. Speaking of future episodes, Molly Rennick. She is the lead vocalist of the band Living Dead Girl. She is also a model for over a decade. We're going to talk about her modeling. We're going to talk about her music, more importantly. All that is coming up very soon. Sam Spade, the vocalist and bass player for the band The Midnight Devils, will be returning very soon as well. He has been on this podcast, I believe, 3 times in the past, maybe 4, so this will be the 4th or 5th time that he's been on. Great history with him. One of the first times he was on this podcast was like 9 years ago. So he's been on here throughout the history of this, so very glad to have him back as well. So be on the lookout for that one. Got a few other things lined up and in the works. Very recent episodes. Had on Michael Kiske, the vocalist of Helloween. That was awesome. Glenn Hughes came back. Rob Rivera, the drummer for Nonpoint, was the episode previous to this. Elias, the vocalist of Nonpoint, was on here way back 8 or 9 years ago. So yeah, just dig through there, check it all out. Follow on all the socials. You can see those on the website. But if you follow on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, I've got nearly every day I've got daily content coming out that is separate from this podcast. Reels about, live performances at shows I'm at, or historical kind of info, or, notable news, that happened in the rock and metal world. Just all that kind of stuff is coming out, funny clips. So just be sure and follow so you can see all that content as well. And anytime you see something, all you got to do is like it or comment or share it. And that's a massive, massive help to kind of spreading the word of this podcast and getting it in front of eyes of other people. But if you want to help monetarily, of course, merch for sale, all that great stuff as well. All right. Once again, a massive thank you to DEB Concerts, Sunset Tattoo, O'Donnell Media Group, and Dizzy F. and Reed. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.